Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarring. Hand me a drink, cause I think I'm going all in.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Red, Orange, and Blue podcast. I am your host, as always, the Mex-Canadian, and boy, do we have a lot of topics to talk about today. Obviously, they are primarily going to be Lions and Red Wings themed, because the only thing that the Pistons have done is, lol, we lost. So, first of all, obviously, we got to get into it. The Detroit Lions ended up winning tonight against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I almost said Lightning, but no, it's the Red Wings. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I don't even give a shit about the score, but it was a good win. And they are going to the NFC Championship game for the first time in I don't even know how long. And boy, was it fantastic. See, I was talking to one of my friends during the game on Discord, and just out of nowhere, when that last catch was intercepted, it was a yell. And when I yelled, it scared him. He actually jumped a little bit, because that's just how incredible it was. The moment it was intercepted, we knew, like, it was done. The game was done and over. We knew the Lions were going to the NFC Championship for the first time, and God knows how long. I don't know exactly how long. And it's incredible to think of, because during my entire life span so far, all 25 years of it, the theme of it with my generation and generations before me and generations before them were, will we ever see the Lions in a Super Bowl or win a playoff game in our lifespan? And the question was probably not. But now we're at a point where Motor City Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, the Detroit Lions have not won one playoff game. They've won two playoff games, and they are going to face the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. Can they win? I have no clue. Honestly, I do not know. From everything I've seen, the San Francisco 49ers are an incredibly dominant team. Obviously, they were the number one seed for a reason. And sure, they've had some down drops here and there, but overall, they are a very good team. They did not finish first place for no reason. So what I'm concerned about is the Lions' defense, which everybody should be. And not just their defensive line. Their primary defensive line is pretty solid. It's the secondary, and everybody knows it's the secondary. Their secondary is such trash that if you just throw the ball pretty much anywhere at this point, you've got a probably 60-40 chance that someone's going to catch it, and it's going to be your team. So that's what I'm worried about with, against San Francisco. I don't watch San Francisco, so I don't know how much of their game is based off of them making the deep passes and throws, or if they're a running game, or what. I don't know what their whole game is. What I do know is that, and teams are catching on, Detroit's secondary sucks, and Detroit's secondary could be what ultimately loses them the game. That and these god-awful third quarter defensive collapses. I don't know what it is about the third quarter with Detroit, with the Detroit Lions. It's so obscenely bad. The third quarter, whenever the third quarter comes around, I'm like, well, something is going to get fucked up here. And lo and behold, the offensive line just crumbles around Jared Goff, not allowing him to get anything going, really, for the third quarter. And, I mean, he got stuff going, but it wasn't as crisp and dominant as we know it can be, as we've seen it before against the Rams, as we've seen it earlier in that game. And I'll give it to the Buccaneers. They were very solid at stopping the run game up the middle. They did pretty decent at it. They did better than most other teams have in the entire season. So that's what I'm imagining Detroit's going to have to rely on, is their offense. You know, with their defense, it's always going to be a 50-50 shot what defense is going to show up. You know, obviously you can rely on Aiden Hutchinson to show up every game, because he has so far, but other than that, it's going to be something that could end up crippling the Lions in this game. But the upside is their offense has proven it can hang with the best of the best, because they are some of the best right now. Obviously, they were the third seed. So the Lions offense clearly can hang with the big boys. It's just a matter if their defense can hold up to the big boys, against the big boys as well. Personally, I think it can, more for the most part. I say for the most part, not because yes, because I think their defense isn't very good, but also because they've proven that their line can hold. Their secondary has proven almost jack shit at this point. They've had some good stops, obviously. I mean, in this game today, they stopped, I think, who was it, Joseph? He stopped a touchdown to potentially tie the game. And so it's one of those things where, yes, the Lions have made it this far, but it's also a very, very distinct and obvious reminder that the Lions still have work to do. They are way ahead in this rebuild than anyone thought they would be, but you got to keep in mind this rebuild is not done yet. This rebuild isn't 100% done. This is not a fully rebuilt team. A fully rebuilt team is a team like the 49ers that are more well-rounded, and, you could legitimately see going to the Super Bowl. In fact, it's predicted that they do go to the Super Bowl because nobody thinks that the Lions can beat the 49ers, which is fair. Obviously, it's fair. But at the same time, you can never count the Lions out, and that's been proven time and time again this season. So I'm looking forward to that game on Sunday. It's going to be a banger, and hopefully the Lions can make it to the Super Bowl. That would be, Jesus Christ, imagine what that would do to the NFL. If the Detroit Lions, the team that's been screwed over consistently and more often than most other teams in the entire league, made it to the NFL, when in reality, we all know that they want the 49ers and the Ravens going to the Super Bowl. I mean, hell, they used their colors in the logo for the Super Bowl. They did it the last 2 years as well, so it's not like it's a secret or anything. So, yeah, I'm really excited and looking forward to the Lions, seeing what they can do next, and hopefully they can pull one out of their asses on this one, because the 49ers, they're obviously not the LA Rams. They're obviously not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers were part of the tank division. So, the Buccaneers, they fought tooth and nail to even be able to get into the playoffs. And then they went and beat, who did they beat? They beat Philly, if I remember correctly. So it's going to be tough, but I do have faith in the Lions, more or less. And obviously, I'm a Detroit sports fan through and through, so I am a masochist at heart. So even if it's just getting run through the entire game, I'm probably still going to watch it. But yeah, so that's going to do it for the Lions section. We got a big section on the Red Wings now for this episode, because it is the weekly review of the Red Wings, obviously. And they've been on fire lately. The Red Wings have absolutely been on fire. Now, they've lost one game in regulation in the entire month of January, and that was against Carolina the other day. So we're going to just go through their games starting from Sunday to Sunday, I guess. And not Sunday, because that was the Toronto game. We're going to start with the Florida game. Florida game, they won 3-2 in overtime. That was probably the best game I've ever seen. I've seen the Red Wings play all season. And it wasn't even and you couldn't tell because of the final score being 3-2 in overtime. But they overcame goal deficits in 2 times. So there was no goals in the first period. It was perfectly fine. Alex Lyon was in net for this game, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, he was. So they're going into this game in Florida with Detroit not having beat the Florida Panthers, not having beat Sergei Bobrovsky since the 2019-2020 season, if I remember correctly. And the only person from that team left is Dylan Larkin. So it was big that they won this, and you could tell it was a chip off of their shoulders. So in the second period, the score opened up. It was a shorthanded goal, unfortunately. Sam Reinhart, who's having just an incredible season this year. He's a free agent at the end of this year, so he's going to get his money one way or another. He came in with a shorthanded breakaway goal. And yeah, maybe you'd like Lyon to stop that one, but it was such a good move that I don't think Lyon stood much of a chance. But then Rasmussen gets the tip from a point shot off a point shot from Mata. It tipped off of his skate, so his last 2 goals were tips from his skate, which is just incredible. So that was assisted by Mata and Copp. Then Fabry gets it with a beautiful, beautiful play by Rasmussen. Rasmussen made a lot of stuff happen in this game, and that was also assisted by Mata. And then Larkin gets the overtime winner on the power play. And this, like I said, this was just a very well-fought and well-played game by the Detroit Red Wings, and I couldn't have asked for far more. And you could tell, like I said, this was a big chip off of their shoulder because they went into Florida, beat Florida for the first time. They haven't beat Florida since the 2021 season. They haven't beat Florida, not Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky's almost had like a perfect record against Detroit, though. So It was just a fun game to watch, you know. They never gave up. As Ken Daniels so eloquently put it, there is no quit in this Red Wings team. And they're finding ways to win. And a lot of that has to do with, well, we'll get into that in a second. We'll go through the other 2 games. Their one regulation loss this year so far was against Carolina, and this was a game where I don't think the Red Wings played their best, but I don't think they played their worst either. This was the definition of a mediocre game. It was 4-2 to Carolina, and Carolina is just so incredible at keeping shots low. Like the entire game, Detroit only got 12 shots on goal. That is a season low for Detroit, and while Carolina had 30. But if you look at the score, they scored 2 goals on 12 shots. And there were so many opportunities for them to shoot, and this game could have been Detroit's easily, because they were going up against Antti Raanta, and Antti Raanta has not been very good this season. He was waived, and the only reason he got called back up was because of the injuries to Kochetkov, and obviously Anderson is out dealing with a blood clot issue, so they had no other option but to go with Antti Raanta. So, I mean, you could tell he was off his game because the first goal was Kostin. He got his start of the season from Veleno and Sprong, and it just kind of rolled in. You know, Raanta didn't have control of it. It rolled in. Kostin gets his start of the season. But then, like 16 seconds later, Martinook comes in, scores from Burns and Stahl. Second period, at 16:25, Natchez buries one from Bunting and Orlov. But then, 19:17, Comfort gets his 10th of the season, becoming the 7th Red Wing, I believe, this season to hit double-digit goals from Larkin and Gostisbehere. Larkin's on an incredible point streak. We'll get into that. But then Svechnikov scores on the power play with the game-winning goal, and then Sebastian Aho with an empty net. So it wasn't their best played game. There were so many odd man rushes that Detroit had that they could have shot on, but they just didn't. And it was so infuriating to watch. But overall, one regulation loss in the entire year of 2024 so far. I think that us as fans can take it. And then we get into tonight. Or Sunday, I guess. I don't know. I'm late recording this because of some other stuff that's happened. But they went on to take on the Tampa Bay Lightning literally 30 minutes after the Detroit Lions ended up beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Red Wings won 2-1 at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Detroit has conquered Tampa Bay this season, and it is so fantastic to see. Like, it was cool because the Tampa Bay Lightning put up a cool little graphic where it showed both of them and the Buccaneers coming into Detroit, and it was a cool graphic. It was pretty sick. but it was all in vain because both Detroit teams won, and we own Tampa Bay this weekend. Oh man, it was so good to see. And this game could have very much gone any other way, because if you guys remember last season, the game that really started, a lot of people point to the Ottawa games that started the downfall with the Red Wings, but if you ask me, the real downfall was the last Tampa Bay game last season, where Vasilevsky basically won that game 3-0. You know, the Red Wings 100% should have won that game. The Red Wings dominated that game. The Red Wings I think they almost had like triple the shots that Tampa Bay had, and Vasilevsky stonewalled all of them. And yes, Vasilevsky's one of the greatest goaltenders in the world, but they're all the signs of this happening. Again, we're here in this game. And it all started with Victor Hedman scoring just about 9 minutes in from Kucherov and point. It was a beautiful play. I personally think Perron missed his assignment, but at the end of the day, it was a beautiful play. Lyon didn't stand a chance. Nobody else was there to cover the man. Oh, it was beautiful. It was just fantastic. So yeah, it was Hedman from Kucherov and point. Kucherov gets his 48th assist. Kucherov already has almost 80 points this season, and we're only halfway through the season. So it's going to be a wild trip to the end of the season for some of these guys. But then Lucas Raymond gets one on a pretty weird goal, because he shoots. It was originally a Dylan Larkin. Dylan Larkin was breaking into the zone. He got stood up a little bit and stopped, so he ended up getting it back to Raymond, who was wide open behind him. Raymond shoots, and it kind of rolls up Vasilevsky's shoulder and stick and goes behind him. And Vasilevsky, it was going to go in anyways, but Vasilevsky trying to stop it and swung around, and his stick hit it into the net. So Raymond gets the goal from Larkin and Perron. And then Daniel Sprong, off of a breakaway in the second period, gets the game winner, and that was just a nice, good snapshot. And he said in his post-game interview that post-game press conference, or whatever you want to call it, that he thought about passing it because he had Comfort coming up behind him, but he thought about passing it. But people on Twitter, or X if you want to call it, such as myself, you know, we were hounding him about not shooting like he should be or like he was before. So he decided, hey, screw it, I'm just going to shoot it, and bam, it went in, and he got the game-winning goal. So that's Sprong's 12th of the season. I think he's got 31 points now. So he's doing really good, and if Steve Yzerman doesn't re-sign him in the offseason, I'm going to be pretty upset, because Daniel Sprong, I don't know what it is about Daniel Sprong. My guess is that it's because of his defensive play, but at the same time, that shouldn't make much sense. That doesn't make much sense, or shouldn't play too much into it, because you've got players all over the league that are incredible offensive players, but are shit defensively, and they have permanent homes on their team. Like Austin Matthews, he's almost certainly the best pure goal scorer in the league, but he can't play defense very well. Look at as a smaller example, Andreas Athanasiou. Some of you Detroit fans probably remember him. God-awful defensively. Oh my God, is he bad defensively. Like, I think he was a negative 74 at one point in a season at some point. I think that was when he was playing for... Oh, I can't even remember who he was playing for at the time. I want to say Anaheim, but I don't think it was Anaheim. No, he was playing for LA at the time. That's where he was playing, and he was like a negative 74 or something like that with LA, I'm pretty sure. But he's got a permanent home on Chicago. Now, obviously, Chicago's not trying to win games, but, you know, I think he signed a 2-year extension with Chicago, but he's a 30-goal scorer all the live long day when he's healthy. So you've got these guys who are just terrible defensively, but incredible goal scorers who find homes consistently. So I don't know why Sprong gets bounced around the league like that. Like, I'm pretty sure he played on Pittsburgh, and then he was in Anaheim, and I'm pretty sure he was an LA King at one point, and then he was Seattle last year. Like, he's bounced around the league. So I think that Yzerman should sign him for at least another 2 years. Because that's what Detroit needs. Detroit needs depth goal scoring, and if you can get Sprong who is just thriving on the third and fourth lines, essentially, then keep that. Lock him up all the live long day, because if you put him with someone like Veleno, well, then his defense isn't going to fucking matter because you're with a Veleno. Or if you put him with a Comfer or a Copp or someone who's fantastic defensively. You're going to have Nate Danielson and Casper coming up in the next few years. So you put them, you sign him, if he's still here, you put him with them, and it all works itself out. That's why you have a well-rounded team. It's why the Toronto Maple Leafs are likely never going to win a cup with the team that they have now, because they've sank 40-something% of their cap into 4 players. Actually, I think it's more than 40% now, into 4 players, and 1, maybe 2 of which, that being Marner and Tavares, can actually defend. Because you don't see Matthews and Nylander out on the penalty kill, but you see Marner out there, because Marner is, he is one of the best two-way forwards in the entire league. So it's definitely something that I think Eisman should consider, and I'm sure he is considering, because I do like Sprong, and if he stays here, obviously he's going to want a decent payday. He's only getting paid $2 million so far this year, so I think for a guy like Sprong, like a third, fourth liner who could score 20, 25 goals in a season, dude, I say you get that for like 4 or 5 mil all the live long day. This is like 4 mil for 2 or 3 years. Hell yeah, dude, go for it. That's a no-brainer. So I think, like I said, I think the whole Sprong thing is something that I think a lot of Red Wings would like to see. And speaking of points, what a segue, right? Dylan Larkin is on a 8-game point streak now after tonight. He has been on fire. He is definitely back, and he is currently sitting atop of the Red Wings points at 41 points with 18 goals, 23 assists, 41 points. He has 1 more goal than Alex Debrincat does, 17 goals, 23 assists, and 40 points. And that brings us to the next topic, which is Alex Debrincat. He is slumped. He hasn't had a goal in 10 games, which everybody knew that Alex Debrincat was probably going to be a bit streaky, at least as far as the Red Wings, being on the Red Wings goes. But it is kind of sad because he wanted to play here, and everybody, he was on fire. He was unstoppable at the beginning of the season. And then, the Sweden trip and everything came, and he petered off a little bit, but he was still racking them in a bit. He had some 2-goal games mixed in there. And then Detroit went into December, and everything collapsed. And that's where I think Debrincat lost a little. My thing with Debrincat that I've been seeing is I believe he's just thinking too much now. I think now that Kane's here, he's being looked upon to be more, not more playmaker. Obviously, Lalonde 100% wants him to be the shooter that he is. But I think himself, sorry, I inhaled and exhaled at the same time there. I don't know what the fuck happened. But I think himself is trying to be more of a playmaker now. And it's really hurting him because his shooting percentage is way down from the first half of the season. And it's not good for the team. Now, obviously, thankfully, right now, the team is being able to subsidize, what all offense Debrincat and Raymond haven't been able to provide lately. Guys like Sprong, Copp, Fabry, Perron, Rasmussen, they're all picking up the slack, but eventually that's going to wear off. And if guys like Debrincat and Raymond don't start picking it up here soon, it could be pretty bad for Detroit. So, yeah, Larkin on an 8-game point streak. And Debrincat, I think, obviously Debrincat's going to pick it back up. I still believe that Debrincat can score 40 goals this season, especially when Kane comes back. And it's going to be a trip. So, like the second half of the season is going to. And, going back into the whole depth scoring thing, let's talk about that third line of Rasmussen, Copp, and Fischer. Because, oh my god, do I love this line. This is a line that defies all laws of nature. Like, out of all three of these guys, Rasmussen's the most athletic. And this line, on paper, shouldn't be bringing any offense. Like, straight up. This line just screams, shut down and beat the hell out of your line. But instead, they've become the beat the hell out of you and score goals line. Like, Copp was on a 3-game goal streak there. Rasmussen has been pretty hot lately. Fischer's been a great Sundqvist replacement, honestly. You know, Oscar Sundqvist was brought in to be a big body, net front presence, and Fischer's doing what Sundqvist couldn't last season. So I'm really happy for this line. It's been the best line for the last 2 weeks. So I really hope they can keep that up, because as everybody keeps saying, they are the engine of this team. They are called upon, and it's obvious they're called upon when things aren't going Detroit's way. They're called upon to go out there, make chances, and make life a living hell for the team that Detroit's playing. And it's because of them, as well as the Larkins. All of this stuff is what is keeping Detroit in the playoff hunt. Like, obviously, coming out of December, if we didn't have that bad December, Detroit is firmly sitting in the third place spot in the Atlantic. Obviously, right now, they are still sitting in the third spot in the Atlantic. But the problem there is or at least I'm fairly certain they are. I can't remember. I don't know if Toronto won or not. If they did, I'm pretty sure Toronto jumps us just based off of point percentage. But regardless, Detroit would be firmly in the third place spot if they didn't have such a bad December, because Toronto has been struggling so far. They've won 1 out of their last 7 or something like that, not counting today, because I don't know if they won today. And a lot of that, one of them was against Detroit, but a lot of them were they were leading going into the third period, like the Colorado game. I think they were leading going into the second or third period 3-0, and they lost that game 6-3. So Toronto's been struggling. Tampa Bay has been rolling, but obviously Detroit won tonight. And then Florida and Boston are almost out of reach at this point. So, not saying Detroit couldn't catch them if they keep this run going, but they're like, last I saw, Florida was like 8 points ahead of Detroit, and Boston's like 12 or something. So they're pretty much almost completely out of reach from Detroit. But if Detroit can get into a third place spot, that would be fantastic for the playoffs. Now they would go in and have to face the Florida Panthers, which I think would just be a fantastic series. You know, because if that one game that they played a few days ago showed anything, it's that these two teams there's a rivalry brewing with these two teams, and I'm here for it. Detroit seems to be having a rivalry they've got a rivalry going with at least 3 Atlantic teams right now: Ottawa, Boston, Florida, and there's a physical rivalry too. Not just hey, we're an original 6 team, you're an original 6 team, there's history there. No, this is straight up, with these 3 teams, a physical, we're going to beat the hell out of you rivalry. So this second half of the for your regular season is going to be incredible. Now, I do have to remind everybody that there is a very, very solid chance that Detroit doesn't make the playoffs this season, and that's not going to be a knock on the Red Wings. You know, unless they completely collapse in the next 2 months here, the next 2 or 3 months, that the odds Detroit is going to, like, the odds Yzerman's gonna blow the team up like he did last season is pretty small. So, and I've got far more faith in the team this season than I do the last season's team. So it's going to, the East is going to be fun, you guys. Like, you've got, how many teams do you have fighting for the Eastern wild card spot right now? Okay, Toronto did win, so that's unfortunate. But looking at the wild card, you've got, counting Detroit right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams in the East that are, let's see, Pittsburgh's the farthest behind, who could actually make the playoffs. They are the farthest behind with 6 points behind Detroit and Tampa. So it goes Detroit, Tampa. Those are the 2 wildcard spots, both with 53 points. Then the Islanders with 51, Capitals with 50, Jersey, you got the Devils with 49, and Pittsburgh with 48. Then you got your bottom 4, Montreal, Buffalo, Columbus, Ottawa. Dude, Ottawa's going to finish below Montreal this year probably, and it's so fucking funny. Like, they've played the least amount of games in the entire league, I'm fairly certain. So, it's... Let's see. Okay, they are tied with Edmonton for having played the least amount of games. Edmonton's only played 42 games, and they're on a 13-game win streak. Like, let's talk about that for a second. The Edmonton Oilers are on a 13-game win streak. What the fuck is that? Like, how do you do that? I don't understand the logic behind it, because it shouldn't be possible. There should not mathematically be a possible way, or scientifically, for a team that was at one point lower than the San Jose Sharks. I'm pretty sure. No, they weren't below the San Jose Sharks. Chicago was below the San Jose Sharks at one point. But these teams were like it was at the beginning of the season for the first month and a half. It went, for all, like, pretty much Ottawa, Chicago, Edmonton, San Jose. Like, those were the bottom 4 teams. Now your bottom 4 is Ottawa, Anaheim, Chicago, San Jose. So Anaheim kind of slid in there because Anaheim's suffered quite a bit as of late from their hot start. But there is no logical reason why the Edmonton Oilers should be on a 13-game win streak like they are now. It's just scientifically. I guess when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Zach Hyman playing on your team, it can, that shit just kind of happens, I guess. But it's uncalled for. So I'm at a loss. But we are now going to get into our Red Wings prospect report, and I put a poll up on the official Red, Orange, and Blue Twitter. You can find that in the description of whatever you're listening on: Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, iTunes. I'm fairly certain we're on. I can't remember everything that we're on, but for sure Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, and Acast as well. So, but this one is going to be Axel Sandin-Pellikka. And as a lot of you guys know, Axel Sandin-Pellikka was taken 17th overall by the Detroit Red Wings this season in the 2024 draft, and he is an incredibly exciting player. He's broken, or at least was on the verge of breaking, several SHL records for an 18-year-old playing in the SHL, and it's a bit insane. If I can get anything on my computer to fucking load right now, because he's a kid. He's 18 years old playing in the men's league. He remains unsigned right now, but Detroit's got 2 or 3 years to sign him since he's playing overseas, and they're going to sign him, obviously. He's injured right now. He got injured a little bit ago, right after the World Juniors. Or I think he got injured during the World Juniors, and then ended up after Sweden lost in the silver medal round, he ended up, and he stopped playing because he was injured. So just this season alone, he had in the SHL 13 points, 9 goals, 4 assists in 25 games. So obviously not world-burning numbers, but that's impressive for an 18-year-old in the SHL. He's over a half point per game, and that's as a defenseman as well in the SHL as an 18-year-old. And so then he went to the World Juniors, and in 14 games, 5 goals, 5 assists for 10 points. So the kid's incredible. And his defensive game doesn't slump either. He was, what is he? He's really good in the defensive zone. You know, he's a -7 in the SHL, but I'm pretty sure that's due to his team not being incredible. I think. I could be wrong on that. I don't follow the SHL very closely. But don't let that plus minus, because plus minus is a fucking useless stat. He's good in the defensive zone. And then even before that, in his 22-23 season, plus 15. So he was projected before he got injured in 42 games to have 15 goals, 7 assists, 22 points. So he's going to be something. I do believe that next season he's got two ways. One, he's going to get signed next season by Yzerman, and he's going to play one more season in the SHL like Casper did, and then he's going to come over and go into the AHL, and then he's going to come make it a jump to the NHL. Maybe. He might spend 2 years in Grand Rapids. We don't know yet. His trajectory is definitely not the same as Danielson's, it's very possible he makes the opening night roster next season. But I'm excited for Sandin-Pellikka. He is a great offensive defenseman, but he does not lack in the defensive zone. He is not like Erik Karlsson or all these other these air quotes defensemen. I've never liked the word offensive defenseman, dude. Like, that's just saying, it may as well just say they're a fourth forward out there at this point. Because, I mean, do you look at Shane Gostisbehere and say, oh, dude, that guy's a defenseman, he could defend anybody? No, you don't. You look at Olli Maatta or Mo Seider and be like, now that's a defenseman. You don't look at Shane Gostisbehere or Jeff Petrie and be like, those guys are, yeah, those are the guys we want stopping people. You don't do that. Lalonde does, but I don't. And this is, look, I played hockey for almost 20 years. I played defense and left wing for all of those. It was primarily defense, but if I needed to, I went up to left wing. So I know a thing or two about playing defense, and what Gostisbehere, the difference between Gostisbehere and Maatta is night and day between their defensive styles, because Maatta is stay-at-home defenseman. Don't let them get any offense, or let them get as little offense as possible, which ideally would be no offense. But your whole job as a defenseman, at least your primary job at this point, is to make sure as little offensive possible, make sure the pucks don't get to your net, essentially. That's the dumbed down version that I can give you, is to make sure the pucks don't get to the net. And Maatta does that very well. Maatta's like a plus of 12 or 13 on the season right now. And like I said, plus minus is a useless stat. But once it gets above or below 10, then it kind of stands out a bit. So, yeah, there's big differences. But Axel Sandin-Pellikka is a very good mixture of a Shane Gostisbehere combined with an Olli Maatta. Like, it's like nope. I was going to say something there that wouldn't have made sense and sounded a bit fucked up. But, yeah, Sandin-Pellikka, I'm really excited for. He looks fantastic. I watched him in the World Juniors, and I watched 1 or 2 games that were streamed from Elite Prospects for free. So I've seen a decent amount of him to know that his ceiling has the potential to be a top. He could potentially be a Norris contender, if you're asking me. Like, he can potentially reach at least probably Cale Makar, honestly. I believe he can reach Cale Makar levels. Do I think he will? It's unlikely, because the odds of a prospect reaching their ceiling is very low. Like, there's maybe at most 2 to 3% of every prospect that's ever been drafted reaches their ceiling. And unless your name is Connor Bedard, you're probably not going to. So, like we see it now with Slavkovsky in Montreal. Shane Wright hasn't done what he's wanted to do, what he's been projected to do. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Sandin-Pellikka, though. Like I said, I do believe he probably spends one more year in the SHL, signed by the Red Wings, mind you, because they don't want to lose him. So he probably gets signed by Steve Yzerman next season, stays in the SHL for one more season, comes over to the AHL, gets used to North American ice for a year, maybe two, depending on how he acclimates, and then we'll see him in the show finally. But now I want to get into something that it was brought up in the Grindline Podcast Discord. Shout out to the Grindline Podcast. But somebody asked them, and I'm stealing this question because I fucking can. What player from the bottom 5 teams would I take if when they start selling off assets, essentially? So essentially, I guess the whole theoretical situation is if the trade deadline was to happen today, essentially, if the trade deadline comes, these teams are selling guys off, and you had to pick from the roster, almost just from the entire roster, essentially, who would you take? And for those of you who don't know, I read off the bottom 4. But the bottom 5 are Columbus, Ottawa, Anaheim, Chicago, San Jose. So we'll start off with Columbus first. And Columbus is interesting because they have a much better team than I think their record shows. Like, they've got a lot of talent on this team. Johnny Gaudreau, Adam Fantilli, Zach Werenski, Kirill Marchenko, Ivan Provorov is mid. Marchenko's pretty mid too. Like, they've got solid talent here. Like Patrick Laine, he should be fan-fucking-tastic, but he just hasn't been. So if you start selling off assets, and I'm Steve Yzerman, I think I would probably go for Zach Werenski. Honestly, I probably would. I know a lot of people will say Johnny Gaudreau, Adam Fantilli. Columbus isn't selling either of those guys. I say probably go for Zach Werenski. He's a solid defenseman, pretty decent offensively. He's a bit of a playmaking. He's a power play quarterback, essentially. He's a +2 on the season, like I said. And whenever time I use plus minus, just preface it with plus minus is a pretty useless fucking stat. So, but I'm gonna say it anyways because people like plus minus for whatever reason. But he's a +2 on a god awful Columbus Blue Jackets team, and plus him and I don't know if you guys know this, but him and Dylan Larkin were roommates. So I would take Zach Werenski. He would pretty much slot right into the lineup, and I believe he would probably trade, or at least try to trade, one of Petrie or Hull. A lot of people are saying Mata, and that's primarily just because Mata is the easiest guy to move out of everybody. He's got really good value right now. Like, he's not you could, as far as draft picks goes, you could probably only get like a 3rd or 4th rounder for him, or a few 2 third rounds or something like that. So you won't get an incredible amount for Mata, but you could move him. I personally don't think he should, especially with Edvinsson more likely than not coming up next season. You want someone like Mata to pair up with him, so that way he has that stabilizing defensive partner. Because we all seen what Mata did for Hronik last season. So I think that you keep Mata and try to move a Justin Hall or a Jeff Petrie, or someone along. Jeff Petrie and Justin Hall would probably be my first 2 choices to try and move, but both of them have no trade clauses, so it's going to be difficult to try and get. It'll be difficult to have somebody waive their no trade clause if you're gearing up to make a playoff run. But this whole situation is hypothetical if I could trade for anybody. So I would go for Zach Werenski. He's a left-handed D, so, Detroit's got a lot of those, but most of them kind of suck. Like, Wallman's good. Obviously, Mata's good. But as far as power play quarterbacks go, the only one we have is Ghost. And Ghost to spare, if you haven't noticed, sucks at defense. So I'd go for Zach Werenski for Columbus. which will bring us to the Ottawa Senators. Now, the Ottawa Senators is going to be tricky because I enjoy quite a few of the players they have on the team. Like, I think Sanderson is going to be one of the best. He's going to be a beast of a defenseman when he eventually matures and gets into his groove. Do I think he's going to be a stellar defensive defenseman? No. He's going to be an offensive defenseman all the live long fucking day. But if I had to choose somebody who would realistically, that's an asterisk on this as well, realistically be able to trade for out of everybody on this team, it's tough. Because I'm tempted to go with Josh Norris. He is a former 30-goal scoring second-line center, and I do believe he still has that in him. But there are some other interesting ones on here. Shane Pinto would be a nice one. Obviously, he just got signed to a league min deal for 1 year, so I wouldn't mind Shane Pinto to be on this team. I think Shabbat would be a decent grab. Even Grieg might be a semi-decent grab, you know. He's a plus 22 on the year, which says a lot for Detroit, for not Detroit, for the Senators as well, plus 15. So if I had to, I think I'm taking Josh Norris. Honestly, I think I'm taking Josh Norris. A second-line center who put up 30 goals in the past. Sign me up all the live long day. Plus, if you need to, he can move to the wing because you know guys like Fabry's probably not getting re-signed after next season, because next season I think is his last year of his contract, so he's probably not getting re-signed. There's a few of the guys on the roster now that probably aren't going to get re-signed once their contract's up. So I say get Josh Norris. That would be my pick. And you could slide him to the wing. You could keep him at center. It doesn't matter with him, honestly, at this point. So I would take Josh Norris. Like I said, these are people who you can realistically trade for. Obviously, if I could trade for anybody, I would be like, give me Tim Stützle. But Ottawa's never going to give up Tim Stützle unless they plan on blowing the fucking team up again, which I don't think they plan on doing because new ownership and whatnot. But next we're going to Anaheim, and Anaheim's got a few players that I think would be interesting to take a look at and look at, you know, a trade. And a lot of people will immediately go to Trevor Zegras. No. Would I mind Zegras on this team? No, not at all. He's a goal scorer, and he hasn't been a goal scorer this season. He's got 4 goals, 3 assists for 7 points, but he is a goal scorer. Now he is the definition of a Gen Z TikTok goal scorer. Everything's got to be fancy everything's fancy and whatnot, but he's effective more or less. So this is just isn't his year so far. And he would be somebody that a lot of people would take a look at and be like, yes, please. But honestly, if you ask me, I would probably want to go for somebody like Mason McTavish. McTavish is having a very underratedly well season for being on Anaheim. He's got 13 goals, 15 assists, 28 points. And I think he could do wonders in Detroit on the wing with, say, Compher. Throw him on the second line with Compher and whoever else you've got at the time, you know? I think you could do that. Another interesting person to possibly go for would be Silfverberg. I think he would be pretty decent to go for. So, obviously, this Anaheim Ducks team is filled with young and veteran stars. Some people will look at Alex Killorn and go, like, I'll take him, but I don't want Alex Killorn on the team. We got enough veterans on the team already. So, I would probably go with Mason McTavish. Now, he would cost a pretty penny. He would probably cost a decent prospect. Like, you would probably have to give up I don't know, probably Antti Tuomisto, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you give him maybe you give Anaheim the signing rights to Geilander, and then probably a pick. But Lucas Dostal is also another interesting one that I think would be interesting to go for. You know, obviously a lot of people will be like, Gibson, we should get Gibson. He's an elite goalie. Yeah, he's an elite goal. He was an elite goalie, but, you know, he's, 32 now or something like that? So, he's 30. So, he's in the prime for a goalie, but he's also stuck on Anaheim. So you've got to take that into consideration for both sides. You know, it's not only is it he's stuck in Anaheim, so his numbers very well could be very skewed, but it's also he's in Anaheim, so they're going to want a lot for him, and plus his cap hit is like $6.5 million or something like that. You don't want to take on a contract hit like that unless you know he's still an elite goalie. So I would, if goalie wise, I'd probably inquire about Dostal, but they're probably looking at Dostal as their goaltender of the future. So, which is fair. Dostal has done nothing but prove he's a solid goaltender. He's got a 900 save percentage, so you can't really go wrong with that. But yes, like I said, I would probably go and try and inquire about Mason McTavish. But that's just me. Next for Chicago, obviously I would love to have Connor Bedard, but that's never going to happen unless Chicago, for whatever reason, blows it up or Connor Bedard asks to be moved. But if we're going down through everyone on Chicago, there isn't a lot here, but if you ask me, I would probably go... Oh, it's tough. Anthony Ciu's there for the taking. Bring him back home to Detroit and be a solid goal scorer, but his defense really sucks, and Detroit's defense sucks now as it is. So I would probably look at goaltending, and Mrazek's having a great year, especially in Chicago. He's a .906 save percentage in Chicago. But Mrazek, been there, done that. We all know that he can't sustain this play. Arvid Soderblom is interesting, too. You know, he is the brother of Elmer Soderblom. And he's not nearly as big as Elmer is. I think Arvid's, 6'2", 6'3", yeah. And Soderblom's fucking, 6'8". So, not as tall as Elmer. But I do think Arvid Soderblom has the potential to be a solid goaltender in this league. So I think you look at somebody like him. There's also Bolivier you can look at. Kurashev would be another interesting one to look at. So there's some guys on Chicago that you would probably take a look at. But if I had to pick out of everybody, it would probably be Arvid Soderblom. You know, he's probably better than James Reimer at this point, more or less. You know, if he was in front of a competent defense, he probably would be better than James Reimer. But I think, yeah, Arvid Soderblom would just do one-for-one swap, Reimer-Soderblom, done. But that brings us to the San Jose Sharks. And obviously, I'm going to pick Filip Zadina. Yep, Filip Zadina. No, God, no, I do not want Filip Zadina back on this team whatsoever. I don't even know what his current stats are. I know they're not very good. Filip Zadina, 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 points in 41 games. Now, granted, it is San Jose, but if you're looking at San Jose and you're looking at players to go for, I think the obvious one would probably be Thomas Hertl. He would probably be a solid person to go for. He was drafted by San Jose in 2012, so he's a bit older. He's, I think, 30, right? 30? I'm trying to do the math on that. Yeah, he's 30 years old, 6'3", left-handed center. You could put him on the wing, obviously. He's got 14 goals, 18 assists for 32 points in 45 games. So he's over half a point per game in San Jose. And Hertl would be someone to go for. You know, you've got I don't know. Ferrero would probably be somebody who you might want to take a look at as well. I think he might have been drafted by San Jose too. Yeah, he was drafted in the second round by San Jose in 2017. So they might not want to let him go. Eklund is another one that you might want to take a look at. He's pretty decent, but, well, he was drafted in 2021 by San Jose, so they might not be so keen to give him up as well. So there's no shortage of guys on San Jose that you would want to take a look at. Obviously, as far as goalies go, Blackwood would probably be a solid grab for somebody for Detroit as well, because Blackwood, he for the longest time on a god-awful San Jose team had an above 900 save percentage. Like, he was like at a 913 for a solid 2 months, and then everything, that was when they were going 0-11. That's when they hadn't won like their first 11 games of the season. But Blackwood has shown that in the worst of times he can come through. So, but I think in the end, I would probably go for try and go for Thomas Hertl. He would probably be the guy I'd go for. Goal scoring guy who, he's a playmaker, it looks like, essentially. So, but that's who I would go for. It's fun to inquire about this stuff because obviously as the trade deadline approaches, these bottom 5 teams will be looking to move guys. Columbus, Ottawa, Anaheim, Chicago, San Jose. They'll be looking to move people for futures or other players that can help them in the future because they're playing for the draft lottery at this point and they want to get as many prospects as possible. So, my final thoughts on Detroit sports right now is... This is the end, by the way. I'm going to give my final thoughts on the state of Detroit sports at the end of every podcast. I think it's going great, We sacrificed the Pistons this year, so that way the Red Wings and the Lions could have good years. The Lions are looking... They do have the potential to make it to the Super Bowl, and that is fantastic. I never thought I would say that in my life, but they look like they have Super Bowl potential. The Red Wings look like they have playoff potential. The Pistons, like I said, it was well worth their sacrifice. It is not in vain right so far. And then the Tigers, they're looking toward spring training's about to start up, so it's a great time to be a Detroit sports fan. At least right now, once hockey and football season's over, we may start to be rethinking those because I don't know how well the Tigers are going to be, and obviously the Pistons are just going to keep sucking for probably a few more years at least. But all in all, I cannot be upset with how Detroit sports have been showing up so far lately. And yeah, that's it. So I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Red, Orange, and Blue podcast. This is the second episode, and I'm enjoying doing this. I really am. I love talking about Detroit sports, and it's fun now because we've got the Lions and Red Wings as winning teams. So it's going to be much harder to do this when the Red Wings and Lions seasons are done, and I've got to cover the Tigers and the Pistons. It's going to be harder to do that, but I'm going to suffer through it, and hopefully you guys suffer through it with me because I can't do it alone. But yeah, you guys, if you guys want updates on the podcast or just general bullshittery, you guys can follow me on X at @the_MexCanadian and the podcast on X. All of those links will be in the description of whatever you're listening to this podcast to. And let me know on Twitter as well what you guys think of anything on here. What do you guys think of Detroit sports right now? What 5 players would you pick from the bottom 5 teams in the NHL? And do you guys think the Lions can go to the Super Bowl? Do you think the Lions are a future Super Bowl team? I love talking about it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. My name is the Mex Canadian, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Adios, everybody.
Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarring. Hand me a drink, cause I think I'm going all in. Get me a shrink who can catch me